And it says I am live. Good evening, everyone. Jumping in a bit early. And I need to because we have Tropical Storm Philippe here. BVI has been under the Tropical Storm watch now. Uh, I didn't mute one of my phones. So, yeah, tag the people you know to tag. Let me just make sure I mute this. Right. Notifications are off now. Right. So, get this. All right. So I shared this on Facebook. I've shared this on LinkedIn. I've shared this on what? Well, let me share this on WhatsApp right now to some people who I know tend to jump in on the live. Um, Yeah. Today's topic is a sexy topic. I still have 2 minutes before it's 7 o'clock. Like I said, we have Tropical Storm Philippe actually impacting the Virgin Islands with some of the torrential rain. I believe the system center is north of us. But if you've been following the tropics, Philippe is a kind of a strange storm. It's lopsided because of a lot of wind shear. Fun fact, I actually flirted with meteorology as a thing that I might do when I was, in high school. Was really interested in earth sciences. Um, so I didn't do that, as you might be able to figure out. But nonetheless, I think that I've still had quite an adventure in my career. And in the career, it has been really interesting. I've been fortunate to have a lot of diverse experiences. My hair looks, I'm really self-conscious about my hair tonight because I had curls in. As you can tell, the curls are not there. A little self-conscious. Hair is just not doing me any favors, but it's hot and it'll be down. But yeah. So, anyways, enough about hair. You're not here about hair care, or meteorology. You are here to get into tonight's topic, gamification in compliance. Now, it is something, and there's the thunder. So it is something that I've thought about for quite some time. But let me let me structure this and let me get started. It is 7 o'clock, people. Good night. Good night. Thank you for joining me. I want to say thank you to all of my new subscribers and all of the continuing subscribers who stick with me. Um, and whether you're here during the live or you come in afterwards, I am still happy for the support. I look forward to more of you. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, it is free for you. Like the live. It helps people get it in their algorithm, and that is completely free. But yeah, compliance is a topic that can be diverse, and it's not just centered on anti-money laundering and counter financing of terrorism, AML, CFT. There's a lot of acronyms in the compliance space, quite a bit, but maybe you might not have thought about all of the extensions that there may be in the space. And hey, I try to make it fun and informative, but this one here, this might also be a bit of a sales pitch because as you know, it's the internet of everything. And gamification is one of those things that I think would add a lot of value to compliance. Now, you've gotten it. If you've been here, if you've been one of the OGs, you will know that I have a passion for compliance. But it includes developing potential APIs and other technologies for compliance. This one was from at the end of 2017. Now, if you are anywhere in the Caribbean, you would have known 2017 was not a good year for the Virgin Islands as it relates to tropical weather. And I think it's like maybe poetic that we have Tropical Storm Philippe impacting the Virgin Islands while I'm doing this live. But it was in those dark days that I had a lot of ideas. You couldn't do a lot of the usual things you would do. Excuse me. Of course, as I start the live, I start to get choked up, especially when you talk about something that was so catastrophic. You didn't have a lot to do, and you had limited light, so I wrote a lot and I thought about design thinking on gamification and compliance. and how it could improve compliance on a massive scale. If you're a developer or you work on a dev team, yes, feel free to reach out to me and connect. If you think that there is a synergy to be had, I'm on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. Touch base with me there. Now, this live is about to get going, so definitely share it with your friends and supporters and all of those who are just here to support me. Ooh, the thunder. I'm happy for you to be here. Let's get this out of the way. So, disclaimer. I'm a financial services regulator. I am not a lawyer and I am not a professional advisor. And the views on this channel are definitely all my own and do not reflect the views of any regulatory body or international standard setter. Now, with that out of the way, let's dive in. So, what is gamification? You could Google it if you don't know, which is what I did to make sure that I had some sort of a framed definition. It basically is the application of typical elements of game playing. So you get a point scoring, you have competition with others, and you have certain rules that you must follow to other areas or activities. And it's commonly seen in the marketing space. But I thought this is something that could be added to compliance, and it would actually make compliance elements more palatable. The idea of gamification in compliance may not seem like a logical step in the business setting, but people compete all the time to hit sales targets in a specific month or quarter. And, people are looking at, like, what are my profit margins and how do I get more out of my sales team? Gamification is one of the ways that they do this. And so they have metrics that are tied to key performance indicators. Now, if you're familiar with KPIs, you will know most of them have an element of revenue calculation in there. And my thinking all then, I typed it out in 2018 fully, really sat down and got out a lot of the different facets of it into compliance. I typed that out early 2018, and I've been sitting on this ever since. And I said, why not this live? Now, to tie it to compliance and specific compliance functions would not be enough. You have to have an incentive for playing the game, and it needs to be tied to something everybody understands: money. Now, I laugh here a little bit because I remember something that happened early in my career that I thought was really funny. And I was like, just fresh to regulation. I was speaking to some guy, I think he was a hedge fund manager, and he was talking about he was in emerging markets. So he was talking about where his travels took him in various parts of the world. And he mentioned one particular country that I knew did not have a heavy concentration of English speakers. So I waited for him to talk and then politely asked him this one question: how did you navigate the language barrier that is in this XYZ country? And not naming the country, keep that there. But he succinctly replied that he didn't have a language barrier. And he saw the look on my face. I was completely confused because I'm like, okay, so what are you saying? And he said, and then he clarified for me that everyone speaks money. And I laughed so much at that, politely, but afterwards I thought about it and I laughed. But at the time, it was the last answer I expected, but it made perfect sense. Everybody speaks money. And it was Charlie Munger. I think that's the business partner for Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha. Charlie Munger has a famous quote that says, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." And that is true every single day of the week. But what are the incentives that we put to compliance? Drop it in the chat if you know of an incentive for compliance within your firm, not a penalty, but an incentive. If you have one, drop it. I have not heard of any. I may be a little sheltered in that regard, but let me know. People, I find that is critical to kind of discuss ways that we could improve compliance. And this is one of the ways that I think would actually get a lot of traction. Thanks for that, Gabriel. So it was, this thinking that I had, because over the years, we have not seen a lot of benefits. In one of my recent shorts, I spoke about UBS and Credit Suisse and some of the eye-watering charges that they had for compliance failures and more specifically to sanctions. But if no one is putting incentives to compliance, what would happen if we change that? What would happen if we incentivize not just compliance, but quality compliance? What if we spread compliance throughout a firm, then a sector, then an industry, and then to the world in a real way? And if you're a developer, yes, I have the mind maps and everything, other tidbits of developing an API. So as we say in the Virgin Islands, check me later. But seriously, if you thought about it, I've thought about it a lot. I think it could actually change the course of compliance. Now, before we get into the possible hows, I like to look at outcomes. I'm very result oriented. So the outcome towards qualitative compliance encourage accurate data collection. Now, one of the easy areas that if you're in compliance or any field really is onboarding. So you onboard something, but in financial services, you could be onboarding a new client. And if you're looking at onboarding a new client, one of the elements that you will have to do is your due diligence or your KYC, as well as the verification. Now, of course, AML, CFT, anti-money laundering, counter financing of terrorism has time-sensitive components around it. And these are all around the walls because they're based on international standards and embedded in local laws. So gamification could aid in the collection, verification, and timely processing of these compliance documents, compliance requirements, as well as validation. Now, validation might seem like somewhat a foreign word if you're deep in the trenches of compliance because you know you're verified, but why is there a need to validate? This is now leaning into my audit background. And from the audit perspective, trust but verify. So validation can be a facet of gamification in compliance. And it will be akin to internal audit. And in this day and age, I'm going to assume viewers have at least played one video game. Super Mario Brothers, Zelda, those would age me. I've dabbled very tiny bit in God of War or whatever game you've played. I've played all of those games. But in those games, they have a concept of leveling up. And we all know, even, like kids born now and all of us kids of a different era knew when Super Mario Brother got that mushroom, he was able to get bigger. When he got a star, he got extra life. And then when you cleared the level, you leveled up. You were able to level up and you felt a boost. Now, it was probably the dopamine hit, but I'll leave that for the neurologists to talk about pleasure centers of the brain and all of that. I'm into neurology and quantum physics and all of this stuff, but these things actually help get towards outcomes and results. So what if you were to apply that concept of gamification to compliance, to data collection? And that would be one level. Verification would be level 2. Validation, level 3. Got ongoing requirements, level up and go to 4. Now, all of these are concepts that I have expanded notes on. And in relation to having those levels, there are certain things that have to be in place prior to introducing gamification. 2 things. 1, top-notch data management systems. 2, well-trained staff. The training of the staff is going to be critical for that. Because, of course, if they're going to play the game, they need to know the rules. And if they need to know the rules, they need to basically get a refresher. So it takes a little more time, but now they have an incentive. So what does that translate to? In my mind, it translates to paying staff for quality work, meritorious work. So pay for merit, not necessarily for volume, because they could be bringing in volume of garbage. And saying it like that doesn't sound sexy. Input of more qualitative data points for compliance purposes that has been properly verified and validated also does not sound sexy. I can assure you it is. So in gamification, I've outlined possible phases with a mind to create integrated data environment and not data silos. And in fact, I think that maybe most, maybe not all, but I don't know, of the elements needed to ensure that there is true integration of data goes beyond just the basic compliance needs. Now, without giving everything away, all the secret sauce, think about this. Ultimately, when we get information, it is provided in a number of formats. And if you have participating employees outside of the compliance division, they're contributing to their performance assessments and their bonus, because you have a way to actually objectively track their contributions to it. And I'm not saying to turn everybody into a compliance officer. I'm saying train the entire staff so you have the entire workforce working towards compliance, in addition to onboarding clients, but doing that properly, in addition to detecting threats and risks, but doing that properly and reporting them. And it would encourage greater participation in the overall compliance function. Now, onboarding, getting a new client, whether you be a marketing firm, a bank, an insurer, it doesn't matter. Onboarding is a universal concept. And using gamification in the review of onboarding of clients would have several markers. So you would need certain markers for there to be points. So I even have a tokenization element in my write-up. And the markers, though, so the data points would allow for reports to be generated that identify and measure risks, as well as produce hotspots. And hotspots, because I'm sweating. But hotspots are important because we all talk about a risk-based approach, but having hotspots will actually help you focus on the areas of higher risks. And when you have that, management and the board of directors would have the outputs, the data to actually make decisions. So for example, in the month of September, you have a nice dashboard showing you not only how many new clients you have onboarded, but now you have what area may be heating up from a risk perspective. Saying that another way, how many clients have triggered risks in key areas like geographic risks or product risk, or name the risk, fill in whatever risk, but you need to have data points that capture that. Are the risks coming from a specific customer relationship team or account management team or account manager? And you could see at the glance in a well-calibrated dashboard that September might have been a hotter month for risk generation. So you have increased your risk in terms of the onboarding element. But then, so that's an aggregated, that's all the data put together, and it shows visually in, say, a color-coded manner, right? So you can go from blues up to reds, and you have the whole spectrum gradation, and whatever the output is would be just one color. And then you would be able to have that information at decision-making levels, board, management. And you could then click on that to disaggregate the data to see what's behind it. But let me not get ahead of myself. So client relationship team. Say you have 10 teams, and you click on that and you see that, okay, the contribution of the redder risks, the hotter risks, hotspots are coming from one particular team. You know whether you need to review that team's work, see what's going on, or are they dealing with the more high-end client that have inherent risks, PEPs, so politically exposed persons and the like. It may be that circumstances of the underlying business is changing, so you might need to revisit the risk tolerance statement. But more meaningful data from integrating gamification can have a lot of positive elements coming into a feedback loop. Now, for the staff playing the game, gamification of compliance requires scoring, right? Because people need to know like what points they're getting, and the points need to be equated to a monetary reward. So imagine this function goes live and runs for a few weeks. All of a sudden, a service provider's compliance officer can provide incremental reports on error rates, right? So onboarding, and then other people do the gamification to see whether due diligence for the onboarding was done properly, risk scoring, the due diligence, all the documents that are required for due diligence to know your customer have been collected, have they been properly certified, do we have a geographic risk exposure? And they carry out those specific checks and input them into the system. So everybody would have their device and they're entering, and it could be devices that are left on property, because cybersecurity risk is a whole different story, and you don't want to have that being a risk embedded because somebody's taking home the device and, I don't know, checking Amazon or something. But saying that another way, you get to see which among your staff are onboarding absolute garbage in applied compliance versus the persons who are doing it properly. And Wells Fargo, which is the bank, I'm so sorry if you have any, whether you're watching this live or later, Wells Fargo is just one of those banks that keep on giving. And when you think that, okay, they might have their compliance stuff together, it's like the bank just turns around and says, wait, hold my bear. I can do better than that. But imagine if you have this running for a few months and you can have a better dashboard. So the dashboard has better information that's available to compliance, chief risk officer, HR manager, clients relationship managers, and anyone else who needs it. Now, I have to stress here that there are a lot of opportunities that are missed right now because the compliance functions are still largely in a silo where HR in particular sit outside. I'm probably going to have a future live very soon about HR and compliance. And maybe that will be a done for you training. I don't know. Put it in the comments if you're interested, or check me on LinkedIn and post in relation to this video that's on LinkedIn. Put it in the comments below in terms of what you're interested in seeing. But if you know a case where that isn't so, where people are not missing these compliance opportunities, drop it in the comments, because I see it still siloed and people still have resentment to it. But think about the buy-in you get when people know that, hey, me here helping this compliance thing means my bonus gonna look green for Christmas. Now run the gamification for a year and add new levels. So remember, in the video game, we're leveling up. And this is where I'd lean into now games like Candy Crush. You have the concept down for Candy Crush, even if you've never played Candy Crush. Too many of us have seen Candy Crush, but you know what you need to do to create a massive clearing of the board of candies and to get big points, right? I mean, I used to kill it, right? And a lot of people used to play it, especially after the hurricane. But how many people still play Candy Crush? Let me know in the comments. But at higher levels in Candy Crush, there are new hazards to navigate. And so the same thing would apply in gamification. As you add the levels in, there will be new hazards to navigate to pass the level. So in gamification of compliance, the new levels are new threats to detect, new vulnerabilities, new typology reports issued by FATF or some other standard setting body where they've said, all right, this is a trend for the industry. You need to look at this. Do you have this in, or a national risk assessment report produced by a country? Do you have these issues that are within these documents? And what compliance measures will then take their cue from those things to be put into the game to evolve and stay ahead of the criminal minds. So all of that said, I'm hearing the thunder and I want to take a shower just in case. If you live in the islands, you know these, you don't even have to live in the islands. You get a bad enough thunderstorm, I don't care how developed your country is, the power goes out. So with all of that said, this is my thinking for gamification. In compliance, it can be used to not only change how compliance is done, but also changing the psychology towards compliance and improving actual compliance. Gamification of compliance incentivizes staff. It provides a sense of accomplishment. People contribute to a meaningful outcome. And of course, those outcomes are noble ones: to detect and prevent financial crimes such as money laundering. But it goes so much further: human trafficking, sex trafficking. I mean, all of these, there's some dark things that happen in the underbelly of the criminal world. And some of them, I might be too soft of a powder puff to really get into them. But from a macro scale, yeah, I'm all for it. I am all for preventing these criminal activities. And over the past few years, the increasing fines for continued and repeated AML, CFT, and now sanctions compliance failures for firms only underlie the fact that, into my mind, the current approach that they may be using for compliance ain't working. Additionally, criminals evolve, right? So it's not like you could have a one and done on a standard. You actually have to keep up to date with the international best practices. Hey, Nappy Roots, thanks for the love. You have to stay up to date with the international best practices and make sure that you can be nimble enough to prevent anything from going wrong. It bleeds into so many things: risk detection, risk mitigation. It bleeds into risk management. And by extension, your compliance methods, your risk tolerance, all of these things have to evolve. Now, you have to have a strong foundation, and that comes back to training. But I've seen so many things, including people talking about, oh, well, we need to digitize the compliance process with eKYC. And I am not ignoring them. But in my head, And for some of the things that I've seen and heard, it still doesn't hit the mark because compliance is still siloed. I don't care how great of an app you have for people to take a picture with their phone and do the EKYC and have the biometric markers and all of that. There is still a gap. I think gamification can fix that. And I think that's about it. This live was not meant to be a long one, and especially now with the weather and the heat. Well, it's extra humid, but I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm always happy to continue the discussion. I think I'll write a bit on this in a blog or maybe a newsletter in the not too distant future. Maybe with another facet of the gamification of my thinking on this without giving away the secret sauce. But we all, I think it could go somewhere. But with that said, this particular live, I have to have a little couple of comments on this particular live. So got through the material, power still on. Woo! Now, we all have ideas and we all have passions. And one of the things that I was reminded of sometime today is that sometimes we're not brave enough yet to act on them. And I'm actually encouraging all of you watching live, thank you for joining me live, or even if you're watching this afterwards, to lean in on those ideas. Doing these lives, there was a time when the pressure was on me and I was like, but I'd get a second and a third win as the live approached. And so sometimes I will put out the live to make sure I keep to the mission. And I can remember my first live introducing my membership chasing compliance. I was so nervous. And I was nervous, but I did it anyway. I had a good support team at the time. I still have a good support team. And they were telling me, don't worry about it. And I was there and it was like, I was really nervous. But that video is still up. Go back and see. It's the first live on my channel. Go back and see if you could tell how nervous I was. But I would encourage you to lean into your passions. Be brave. Don't be another 30 years older and regret not doing something that you're passionate about. So before I go, again, the plug for the membership Chasing Compliance. I have the best members on the planet. And if you want to join us for these discussions, and as you can see, it's not just for those who are focused solely on compliance. We're focused on innovation, design, thinking, and helping each other. If you want to join, it's $49.99 a month. There's a link in the description. The price is going to go up in 2024. I have a lot of work to do in this space still. It's going to happen. The members still get access. I engage with them. I'll be engaging with them a lot more. And of course, they get a lot of free stuff and they have permanent discounts to everything else offered in some of the stuff free, some of the stuff heavy discounts. So, if you're a compliance professional and you're thinking about a space and you want to jump in, you jump in today. You get access to all of the free stuff today. You get access to the code today. So there's that. I'll be launching, what else? I'll be launching mini courses in the fall. And so I'll have polls up on that. And yeah, if it is that you are interested in what my future courses would be and you want to vote, definitely vote. The poll will be here on YouTube in the community space. So make sure you stay tuned to those polls. And yeah, share the passion for compliance. And I would love to thank the BVI infrastructure for holding up for this live. Whew. Tropical Storm Philippe is getting a little intense. So I am going to not flirt with any hazards. Whoo, yeah, big thunder. I don't know if you could hear that. But if it's your first time tuning in, thank you. There's so much more. The weather is getting dicey and I will be back in a future live. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and have a good night. And remember, the passion for compliance is here. So I am always happy to share that passion. Share it with your friends. Tell them about it. Tell them to subscribe. And I'll be back with another one soon. Bye, guys.